As a lot of you may or may not know, Rockstar Games is my favorite game developer. LA Noire, GTA, Bully, Max Payne, and even f***ing Earthworm Jim have a special place in my heart. And although I've loved these games for so long, there was only one Rockstar game I had never played, and that was Red Dead Redemption. I had no particular reason for this, especially since I have a weirdly deep connection with the Wild West. I love spaghetti westerns, The Hateful Eight is one of my favorite movies, and I love playing as the farm and cowboy archetype in games like Minecraft and Stardew Valley. And because of this, I thought it may be fun to give Red Dead a try. And I'm honestly thankful I did, because this game is one of my favorite Rockstar games of all time, and one of my top favorite games as well. I'm going to split this up into a few sections to try to keep everything mostly organized, and I also want to throw a quick spoiler alert out in the open, because yeah, this game has been out for a fucking minute, but if you haven't played this, play it, and then watch this. Alright, now I'm going to bore you about some shit with my dad and me. So in November of 2020, I asked my father if he could help me build a gaming PC, and it was a really nice experience because my dad got excited to have a father-son project again. After all, I'm 21, so we don't really do that kind of stuff anymore. My dad works in IT, so he brought home some spare parts and we slapped together a gaming PC akin to Frankenstein. Regardless, it functioned and I could mostly play games on it. Sooner or later, and I think this was around December, I got a GTX 1650 per the recommendation of my wonderful friend John Nail. And because of this one simple upgrade, my library of games could be expanded. And this was really exciting. I could now play games at a higher resolution and a better frame rate. I bought GTA 5 and convinced my friend Matt to buy it so we could play it together on stream. Plus, it was on sale, so I figured why the fuck not, especially since how GTA 5 is not only fun, but it's free stream content. While I was browsing, I also saw that Red Dead Redemption 2 was also on sale. So in one transaction and a little convincing from Matt, I bought both. It's also worth mentioning I hadn't played the first game either, so Matt said this was okay because Red Dead 2 is a prequel sequel, meaning the events in Red Dead 1 occur after Red Dead 2. This is confusing and a lot of people f*** that up, but it's kind of like The Godfather 2, Monsters University, and the Star Wars prequels. Just because they came out after or have a 2 after it doesn't mean it's a continuation of the story. Now that that's cleared up, I also hadn't had the ending of Red Dead 1 spoiled for me, which I know what happens now, and apparently I was one of the only gamers to not know the original Red Dead ending. So I jumped into this game with no knowledge of the series whatsoever. My preconception of the game was that it was a Western GTA, which for me was enough to buy it. Now that the background is established, I have put about 150 hours into this game. Let's finally f***ing talk about it. Let me say, to start, I've never been grabbed by a story so quickly in my entire life. The writing in this game is second to none. It is completely unparalleled by any game I've ever played. Even during the time riding your horse to missions, the writing is stellar, which to me was such a breath of fresh air compared to GTA 5. I think to best put it, GTA is a wacky game, with comedic writing, but sometimes it can become serious. Red Dead is an extremely serious game, but it can get a little wacky sometimes. Red Dead Redemption 2 is extremely upfront about what kind of game it is. As soon as you load up to the game, you meet one of the greatest casts of characters in video game history. Arthur Morgan, the sharp-tongued gunslinger brought into the Vanderlyn gang at an extremely young age, and Dutch's adopted son. Dutch Vanderlyn, the man with the silver tongue, the impetuous leader. Hosea, Dutch's right-hand man. Bill Williamson, the fiery gunslinger. Miss Grimshaw, the camp's maternal figure. Tilly, Karen, Lenny, Abigail, Sadie Adler, Charles, and even John Marston. These characters live, love, have fights, their own goals, aspirations, and dreams. Often I found myself sitting at camp and trying to get to know the gang better, and that was easily one of the best parts of the game. The story begins in 1899 in a snowy, dark, mountainous setting. The gang just had an unsuccessful robbery in the town of Blackwater and have escaped detective agency the Pinkertons, led by Agent Milton. The rest of the game is spent running from the Pinkertons and trying to obtain large amounts of cash to try and escape the America that has begun to move on from the age of outlaws. Arthur Morgan eventually becomes wary of Dutch's grand schemes that always seem to end up blowing up in their face. Eventually, Arthur Morgan is faced with his own mortality that had been slated since being diagnosed with tuberculosis in Saint Denis. Alright, so let's go into the writing, specifically. You know when you're driving in GTA 5, and the characters just babble on and on about nothing, and it's always some shit that you don't even care about when you're driving to missions? That same system of writing is in Red Dead, yes, but before you roll your eyes, because yeah, the quality of writing during those scenes is generally ass cheese, in Red Dead, it's quality writing. Now, it's not as good as when you're watching a cutscene or in the middle of a story mission, but I always found the dialogue to be entertaining and fun to listen to. Now, here's the difference between Red Dead and GTA's writing. In GTA, there's always one focused protagonist, minus GTA 5 where it had 3 main protagonists, but they only ever focus on that protagonist or those protagonists. and the side characters feel so empty and bland. Did you ever play GTA 5 and go, oh my god, I can't wait to learn about Jimmy DeSanta and his inability to get a fucking job? I love this game. Or, wow, Lamar is such a fun character, I must know his backstory. No, you haven't, because these characters are nowhere near as interesting as the one in Red Dead. In Red Dead, I want to learn about almost every single character. I want to learn about Sadie and her husband, who unfortunately passed away. I want to learn about Dutch and why he has such a disdain for their rival gang, the O'Driscolls. I need to learn about why John Marston had changed so significantly from the first Red Dead and the second Red Dead. This is truly what sets the game apart from any of its counterparts. I don't think we'll see writing this great in a video game in a very, very long time. This is Rockstar, okay? The king of realism. As my good friend Casey says,
and of course, it's a Rockstar game, so everything is in tip-top teraflop shape.
Now, as for the realism, they've taken this to another f***ing plane of existence in Red Dead. Mud piles up when you walk in it if you don't sleep enough. Arthur yawns more. If you eat too much, you become overweight. And if you don't eat enough, you become underweight. And so many more examples. The amount of animations I've seen, from the one-offs to the one that you see often, is expansive. I can't even imagine how much time was spent putting in that many animations that you may not even use sometimes. This can be a huge pro at some points, because when you're put into a great game such as this one, the most important thing is the story, and the best way to convey a story through a medium like a video game where the player is in control of the actions is immersion. This game is extremely immersive, but also the realism can go too far at some points. Like, sometimes this game can be too fucking real. Let's say you kill someone, okay, and you go to loot them. That looting animation is like 5 or 6 seconds long. Now imagine you go to loot like every fucking O'Driscoll in one camp. It would tack on about like 30 minutes to an hour to the experience. Now yes, this is an obvious con, because during these times it takes the pacing of the game and puts itself at a total checkmate. Luckily, looting and some of these other animations don't give you very much in terms of loot. Like, if you loot an entire group of people, you may come out of it with like 45 bucks. Which after a while isn't too much money. You're pretty f***ing rich towards the end of this game. The gameplay can be shallow at some points, especially in the second half of the game, post-Guarma, and you're just subjected to mowing down enemy after enemy with a cover system that just doesn't f***ing work. Now this doesn't particularly bother me, especially since, as I said, I went into this game looking for a great story, and the gameplay for me was good enough to deliver said story. I also want to mention the open world, which I've heard a ton of YouTubers say is empty, which I outright disagree with. I don't think you can go 2 minutes on horseback in the game without a stranger, random encounter, or just a fucker riding the trail. I think this open world is pretty realized for what it's worth, and I don't understand how people think it's empty. Plus, I've also seen people saying that the open world is too big because you spend too much time riding from place to place via horseback, which I could see as an issue if there wasn't a super simple fast travel system that you can use from camp and Arthur's camp in his inventory. The gameplay, at points, yes, can be rough, but overall, I never found it to be too distracting from the main experience. The soundtrack for the game is one of the better I've heard. It's not as good as this, but it's much better than other Rockstar games, minus GTA maybe. Hello. The range of music is kaleidoscopic. You go from very western, banjo-heavy camp songs to triumphant battle pieces to one of the coolest video game pieces I've ever heard, Unshaken, with the super talented D'Angelo. When I heard Unshaken for the first time, it was when I was riding back to Guarma to reunite with the gang after another failed heist by Dutch. I had such a rush of emotions. Like, this was one of the coolest songs I've heard in a long time, especially since it fit the theme of the game so perfectly. In the same vein as the animations, the sound design is super realized. Often in a town like Saint Denis, you'll get homeless people asking for money, street performers, trolleys, stagecoaches, music from the local saloon, horses, people walking and having conversations. It's almost sensory f***ing overload at points. Like, I can't even imagine how much time was spent on just collecting sounds for everything, because generally, all the sounds were on point. They matched perfectly. The voice acting in this game is also amazing, and from what I've seen, most of it wasn't even voice acting. It was full motion capture, which is even more impressive. I feel like each actor fits their character beautifully. According to what I've seen, it took them about 5 years to do all the voice acting and capture, which just seems so short to me. It's very good, which is not surprising considering Rockstar's track record. A lot of the times you'll have characters that are so far away, and then they'll have to yell to hear each other, and then when they get closer, it's just perfect. Now, yeah, if I haven't made it clear, I'm a pretty big fucking fan of this game, but it's not without its flaws. For one, post-Guarma, this game slows way the down, and I think Donkey put it best here.
Then Chapter 5 hits, and I go, What the hell?
The game takes a dramatic nosedive in quality when you wash up on this island.
And to this, I agree. Plus, I feel like the motivations for the shooting galleries you're subjected to can get extremely tiresome. Like, instead of expanding on the characters that you already have, we're being introduced to new characters that, for me, I just have no connection to because they're so new and I just can't relate to them very well. As far as that goes, I never really ran into any bugs or glitches, but on both of my playthroughs, I always had camp members telling me I was going to get cold with what I was wearing, but my temperature meter always said fair. And that honestly annoyed the shit out of me because sometimes I'd rather have some unique dialogue than getting berated for my fucking outfit. Also, the lack of creativity with the approach to missions can affect the pacing and overall quality of the missions. A lot of times, the only way you can do a mission is the way Rockstar wants you to do it, which sucks, but I also kind of understand. Because maybe the best way to convey the story is the way that you have to do the mission, if that makes sense. Also, I know that it's important to set up Red Dead 1, but the epilogue is honestly a grind, and I didn't quite care for it, and I found myself disagreeing with Abigail a lot of the time, which took me way out of the experience. This might be different from some people, especially the ones who played Red Dead 1, but it was just boring. I didn't want to mess around with cows and horses and shoveling literal like every 5 minutes. Like, why is there so much shit? I don't get it. All of these issues are super minor, and I feel like it didn't super affect my time playing the game, but in the second playthrough, they definitely bring themselves out a little bit more than on my first one. In conclusion, I'm super grateful and glad that I picked up the game, and I hope that Rockstar can wow me as they did this time with their next one. If you haven't played this game, I really recommend you give it a shot and enjoy the story as it unfolds itself. Especially if you're into a game like The Witcher 3 or Skyrim, and you're still playing those games and you can just get lost in a world and the characters, this would be the perfect game for you. I highly recommend it. And if you don't like those kind of games, I don't fucking know, play like fucking Gex or something.
Licking my way to the top.